Hello and welcome back to the Mind Meld PR Breaking News Podcast. It's been a while. I am your host, Jonathan Narvey, the founder of Mind Meld PR. I am joined today by PR associates at Mind Meld PR, Kelsey Barnes and Kendall Soretsky. So we have a big news item to discuss today. I wasn't expecting to resume the podcast again this quickly, but this kind of dropped in our lap. It dropped in the world's lap. Elon Musk has bought Twitter. That's pretty cool, pretty amazing. Well, maybe some people think it's less cool. We have some thoughts around this as a PR agency, as professional storytellers, as communicators. So we'll just get right into it. I want to say a few words about what I've seen around Twitter in the past and where I think it's headed, and then we'll just join a discussion. So, okay. Number one, what does Elon Musk buying Twitter actually mean? Very superficially, some people might think it makes very little difference. A billionaire is buying a company which until now has been led by billionaires. If you happen to believe that all elites are pretty much aligned, and just as the rest of us are aligned against them, I'm not a billionaire, then there's really no difference. But I believe there's a difference here. I think a lot of people are already piping up on Twitter. People who are not fans of Elon would agree that it does make a difference, that he is going to change things. So we're going to get into what that means. Again, we're interested because we run a PR agency. We sometimes help our clients with social media. We're interested in communicating. Twitter is a kind of hive mind of hot takes, for good or bad. Sometimes you can pick out bits of actually useful signals within the noise. A bit more historical context. We're based in Vancouver, home of Hootsuite. That's one of Canada's few unicorns, a tech company valued at $1 billion or more. That's arguable in retrospect, but anyways, at the time, I remember Hootsuite coming out. It was all about coordinating, monitoring, scheduling your tweets and other social media apps. We still use it, as do some of our clients, to manage Twitter and other social media apps. So as a tool to buttress your sensory apparatus, Twitter has pros and cons. To the extent that it can introduce you to a wider world of opinion and information, seems to be more useful. But maybe that's part of the problem with Twitter as it stood in, or it has stood in recent days. You look at Babylon Bee, the satirical site, or Libs of TikTok, and other famous people who have effectively gotten canceled on Twitter. You see the Hunter Biden laptop story gets dropped to the bottom of the ocean by Twitter. And this, for those of us who, keep John Stuart Mill's philosophy not necessarily top of mind, but at least back of mind, that is a little disturbing. John Stuart Mill was the guy who said, "He who knows only his own side of the case knows little of that." I find Twitter as a useful insight into the other side, or not necessarily people I oppose, but people I want to see how other people think. Before we get into the discussion, and I know I've been rambling for a bit, I'll give you how and sort of an analogy of how I think about how things have gone on Twitter lately, why it seems important that Elon Musk seems to be saying that he wants to open up Twitter as a free speech area, a place where you can have a true marketplace of ideas. These seem good to me. But I'll give you an analogy. It's one I've been thinking about for a while. Imagine you go off to war and you are in charge of the radio for communicating, making sure all the troops are in communication. And you can hear your side's communications, and then one day you turn the dial and you realize you have access to the other side's communications. Wow. Well, you are astonished and very pleased with yourself at this discovery. Um, in fact, you share the information. Low-level officers and others who have seen what you're doing, they begin availing of themselves of this opportunity to hear the other side, learn more about what the enemy is thinking. Surely you are in line for a promotion. And then your commanding officer learns of what you have done, and the orders come down. Nope, no one gets to listen to to the enemy's radio. They surely have nothing useful to say. Besides, if our side listens to them enough, they might be persuaded to join their cause. Because what they're saying is so seductive, so persuasive, it could take an instant, maybe 30 seconds. So, nope, our people will not be listening in to what the other side is doing. We will not take advantage of this. That sounds a little wacky to me. Maybe my analogy is off, though. Maybe the way I'm thinking about this is maybe there's something wrong with it. So again, Kelsey Barnes and Kendall Soretsky are here to maybe bounce ideas off those ideas, maybe poke holes in them. Whoever wants to take the first swing, please go ahead.
Well, I'll kick it off here, Jonathan. Thanks for having me on the show. I just wanted to point out the fact that when you join Twitter, you're joining something and signing up for it and accepting the terms and conditions. And so I have an analogy that I have been thinking about this and I will share. So when you go to someone's house and they're having, you say, I'm having a party, come on over. And you arrive and they say, oh, shoes off, please. You have to take your shoes off. It's not about the fact that they don't want you there. It's not about the fact that they think shoes are bad indoors. It's just like, at my house, these are my rules, no shoes. That's kind of what's happening on Twitter right now, where people are signing up, you're going in, you're having fun, and then there are some rules that are being assigned to you. You have to get with the program. You're signing these terms and conditions. You might not be reading them in full. They might be written with a lot of jargon. That's intentional. But when you're joining these sites, this is what you're signing up for, and that's the reality of it. Twitter, before Elon Musk bought it, was marketed as a news app. They have to make sure that they're not spreading disinformation. I'm not saying that they're doing a great job of it. I'm not saying that they're even right 100% of the time, or even 50% of the time. But these are the rules that they're making. These are the rules that you have to subscribe to when you're joining Twitter. That's just kind of how it works, in my opinion.
No. By the way, I was going to say I agreed with you 100%. I now agree with you 99%, maybe 100, but there was a bit where you talked about disinformation, and we can have a discussion about really who is responsible for that. But actually, I think this gets to the heart of the discussion.
Media literacy.
People are upset that, oh, Twitter is enforcing rules arbitrarily, blah, blah, blah. But whatever, it's a company, they can make the rules. Okay, well, Elon coming in, the rules are going to change. So great. I believe everyone should be following the rules. The rules are about to change. Great. We're all on the same page. We agree.
I think that it was an unnecessary takeover, though, because you already have freedom of speech. Freedom of speech isn't exercised in private places. I have freedom of speech and you have freedom of speech in your own home. No one's censoring you. And
are you sure about
I'm not being censored in real life. Are you?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So.
There's both, there's shadow banning, there's throttling of traffic. So,
No, I mean in real life, Jonathan, that's what freedom of speech is applying to in your
well,
everyday organic face-to-face encounters.
so well, I don't know. I would think that we spend more and more time online where, more and more of the discussion is not in a literal
But then the
physical.
conversation changes to what is real life? What do you consider to be real life? What do you consider to be freedom? Everyone has different definitions.
Well, I think it would be fairly easy to hit upon a definition we could all agree on of what freedom of speech is. I mean, this we don't have to reinvent the wheel, actually. But you have some interesting thoughts here. I wonder if Kelsey has. Kelsey, where are you at with Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter?
So I basically support Kendall 100%. To me, nobody's forcing you to join Twitter. You sign terms and conditions. Like
Great.
Yeah,
So we all
everything
agree.
Kendall just said is basically how I feel 100%.
It just feels like his takeover is arbitrary, and it feels like it wasn't necessary in my eyes.
Okay, why is what do you mean by arbitrary? Maybe I'm not understanding.
Well, we already have rules, and now Elon Musk just was pissed off, for lack of a better word, about rules that were impeding what he felt was an inviolable right to say whatever the heck he wanted on Twitter.
Well, I don't think he's the only one who thinks that way.
But then you look at what he's tweeting, and he's making fun of Bill Gates. It's not like he's saying things, in my opinion, that are revolutionary, and he's like, oh, we have to do this and this to make the world a better place, and Twitter's saying you can't say that. He's just kind of making mean, petty tweets, and he's getting in trouble for it.
I assure you, I'm okay.
How did you feel about the Bill Gates tweet?
Yeah, but the thing is, he sent off the Bill Gates tweet, and it wound up on. Oh, all right. Did it get censored?
No,
I don't
it
think
didn't.
but yeah, he did not spend whatever it was, $43 billion, so that he could make sure that his tweets and his tweets alone were uncensored. I don't think that was his motivation.
I feel like it's a petty point that he's trying to make. I don't think that it's like him being a hero for those who are being silenced.
Well,
that's not how it reads to me anyway.
I'd like you to steelman this Elon's position, just to make sure we are aligned. Again, this goes back to the whole John Stuart Mill thing. If you don't understand the other side, how they think, then maybe you don't understand how you think, and maybe there are other things that, maybe there are other considerations here. So either one of you, I was wondering if you could lay out what would be a best case rational scenario for why the richest man in the world, again, based off his own comments, he's been very clear about, at least why he's been very clear about the reasons that he wants people to think that he bought Twitter. So maybe, what would be the most fair, even generous understanding of why this guy, why Elon Musk, the SpaceX guy, the Tesla guy, why is he getting involved in social media?
I mean, I just feel like he wants a piece of the pie. I don't even know, because to me, it's like, in regards to freedom of speech, as long as you're not being hateful on Twitter, you really can say whatever you want, to me. As long as you're not, being racist, being, homophobic, personally. So I really don't understand why he feels the need to buy Twitter, as long as he's not being, awful.
He wanted to enable and empower people to more easily make criticisms and to share alternative, differing points of view, which I think is great. He even has tweeted today that he hopes that his critics will continue to be critical of him on Twitter. So I don't think that that's a wrong thing to do. However, I also think that Twitter is what you make of it. It's all made of algorithms, and people get locked into their own echo chambers. And so the more things that you interact with, and the more things that you're seeing, and the more tweets that you're liking and retweeting, etc., you're going to acquire and accrue a Twitter that's going to only reflect your worldview. which is when I think it gets dangerous, because maybe he'll make changes to the algorithms and maybe he'll make changes to the platform itself. That's something that I could see being a positive. But if he doesn't do that and he just allows for people to be critical and to share differing points of view, I'm worried that it will spiral into this hate sharing place where people can just say awful, horrible things about trans people.
Mhm.
And the more that you see and the more that you interact with, the more that you see. And
Right.
to you, that becomes your one worldview. And again, it comes back to media literacy, where people are going onto Twitter and they're thinking, here I am, I'm a voice in the world, and this is empowering, and I can say whatever I want. And then you start to interact with more people who believe you. And then you think, yeah, this is the whole world. We're all on the same page. But it's not. It's just a microcosm of individuals that you've interacted with. And it's the algorithm feeding you that.
All right, so you made some very excellent points, which again, I agree with. Actually, I think I agreed with all of it. So
Good.
actually, there's very little that we disagree about here. Like you, then again, I did ask you to sort of, instead of doing a straw man of Elon's position, create the steel man. So maybe that's um, some part of why I seem to be agreeing, but I think that was fairly said. I think it's also fair to say, based off what you just said, that look, Twitter in some respects is a toxic place, and it seems like you could improve it. Now, one way of reducing, if you wanted to reduce hateful speech, if however you want to define it, let's say it's speech that is critical of it's racist or sexist, misogynistic, whatever. Okay, well, one, it seems to me, obvious improvement Twitter could make that they should have done from the very start, that Elon, I suspect, might be thinking of this, but maybe not. Why not do what LinkedIn does, what Facebook does? And instead of being, snarky mouth 59, you actually have to list your name with your profile, and that has to be somehow verified. He's talked about getting you pay $3 and then you get a check mark and you're official. Doing it that way. Okay, well, now who in their right mind is going to create a Twitter account, have a verified identity, and then do the one thing that's pretty much guaranteed to get them fired, or is going to get them, their whole family is going to be like, oh man, you shouldn't have said that. Like if you say something racist on Twitter, your colleagues know who you are, you're out of that job. If you run a business, your clients are no longer doing business with you. That kind of thing. What do you think of that? Having would that be a positive change that he could make?
I don't think that, I think that sounds great in theory. I just don't think that it would actually be actionable. I think that there's a lot of things that I could say as a white woman that certain people of other genders or sexual orientations or different ethnic backgrounds couldn't say. And conversely, like things that someone else could say and I couldn't. Like we previously had a president who was caught on air talking about how he had grabbed a woman by her genitals and didn't lose his job. I don't know if that is what we're letting fly these days. I don't know if having your public name and face on Twitter would actually make a difference. If anything, I just see it as a way for cancel culture to get even worse.
I also don't think like buying a check mark means anything, because if everybody can just buy a verified check mark, they really mean nothing.
Part of the value of the internet is that it is the anonymity that it affords you.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so two things there. I think the idea, I'm not an expert on this, but I think the idea with the buying a check mark, and any move is going to be, well, there's positives and there's also negatives. Yeah. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But with the check mark thing, if there's any cost above 1 cent, well, now spammers can't use Twitter because it's impossible to scale. You can't, let's say the Russians can't purchase like 100,000 spammy accounts and just throw bot driven messages through that. It's just, it becomes more costly. So, that's a benefit. But I see what you mean. Like, absolutely, in other walks of life, it would be strange if you could just buy your way into any situation. In a lot of situations, it totally makes sense. But if I don't know, you could imagine some private club that
Yeah, it's just gonna make, if the internet is supposed to be egalitarian and Twitter is supposed to be this equal place where everyone can have their voice, that would kind of be making it inaccessible and removing it from the masses. A lot of people couldn't afford $3 to verify themselves. And if verification becomes like the new cultural currency and who's authentic and who's not, then that means a lot of people don't get to partake.
Well, I mean, if
on a personal note, like I got verified in the fall and I've seen the way like people engage with my content differently now that I've been verified. So just
hold on, you've got a blue check mark?
Yeah, just in November. Yeah.
How did I not know this?
I don't know. It seems like I didn't even want to bring it up. I'm like, it's so lame. But like, I've noticed personally firsthand how people engage with my content differently based on having a blue check.
All right. So how many followers do you have, by the way?
3,600-ish, I think.
See, I've been hovering around the 2,000 mark since, I don't know, well, years ago. This is what I mean, look, I can't say for sure. Maybe I just put out content that people think sucks. That's possible. But I keep hearing, shadow banning, algorithmic throttling of opinions that Twitter just does not like. They don't have to show how they're doing it. But, guys like Larry Elder, who ran for governor down in, or it ran in the recall campaign in California. He was called the black face of white supremacy because, black Republican. Just he was defamed, slandered. And anyways, his numbers have been going up, 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 up. And then as soon as the recall ended, just down by hundreds of thousands. And it's like, well, okay, maybe people just stopped following him for whatever reason. Or something else was going on behind the scenes. There's many examples like that.
When I hear people talking about being shadow banned, though, it's from extreme leftists, people who are promoting socialist ideals. I don't see that so much with conservatives. And I am in my echo chamber of Twitter, which is mostly very left-wing and also comedians, I still manage to see a ton of appalling, in my opinion, right-wing content.
Well, look, yeah, however you want to define it, I think there are large.
I mean, when I say appalling right-wing, I mean like hate speech, talking about like inequalities as if it weren't something that mattered, not giving people who are of different sexual orientations the time of day, acting as if they're less than. That's what I mean when I refer to appalling right-wing stuff.
We're in total agreement. Look, Twitter is a cesspool full of toxic talk from, again, anonymous weirdos. So, I feel like that's.
But it's not anonymous. It's Ben Shapiro.
Well, Ben Shapiro hasn't said anything hateful. I follow the guy. Unless your definition, well, this goes back to definitions of what you consider hate speech. If I say, I hate Joe Smith, and I link to a particular, Twitter handle, is that hateful? Yeah, some people would say it's hateful. It's like has to be a group that is defined, and we know what the definitions are. Okay, fine. There's Ben Shapiro. That dude is he's the #1 target of the alt-right in the United States and has been for a number of years. That guy gets like more anti-Semitic messages than anyone on earth, as far as I understand. So
my point is not that You
Yeah.
can't experience, like, you can be right wing and still experience hate. It's not, but I also think that a lot of it comes from like, having a pundit or a face like Ben Shapiro or Candace Owens, for example, as a face for these kind of controversial ideals emboldens the anonymous people to just say whatever they want. And then that is what spirals into hate speech. So they're seeing Tucker Carlson talking about something, and he's talking about it in a way that is vetted and verified because he's in traditional news media. And it's just going to embolden the everyman to say whatever the heck they want, because Tucker Carlson was basically saying that anyway.
Yeah, like gives people permission to, to open. It's them opening the doors basically to.
Yeah, which is what I'm worried about
Yeah.
with this. I don't want to give people permission to say horrible, awful things.
I gotta say, I have a journalist here. I have a well, you're both PR pros. I was expecting a bit more of a pro-free speech kind of.
But you have freedom of speech. You're on Twitter.
Yeah,
You're signing a
I'm
petition.
totally cool with freedom of speech. As long as you're not being an asshole to other people.
Well,
and that's what I'm not here for. You have freedom of speech. Join your groups, meet up with your friends in person, organize IRL, but I don't want to see it on my Twitter feed. I'm sorry.
Well, I think that's a fair. I think probably both of you are echoing sentiments that are frankly quite popular on Twitter and off today. So I think we've had a good discussion, sort of rounding up, the pros and cons of Elon Musk owning Twitter. There's going to be people who think it's awesome. There's going to be people who, think it's, well, at best, a neutral change of condition. I think we're agreeing that Twitter needs improving. I think we're disagreeing on maybe the solution. How could Elon or anyone else improve what's happening on Twitter? Is it fair?
Yeah, I guess I just don't see social media as a valuable vehicle to have these kinds of conversations. You only have so many characters. How can you talk about a point that is maybe controversial, and maybe you are coming from a really great place and you're coming from a point where you want everyone to be better for this thing, and you can't convey a nuanced opinion in so few characters. It's not really a place for conversation. It's a place for a hot take. It's a place for a joke. It's a place to share a meme, but it's not somewhere where you're going to necessarily have a valuable, life-changing, worldview altering, engaging discourse.
Absolutely. And if you want to tell your story in the long form, if maybe you're looking for blog posts, case studies, white papers, we've got content marketing pros who can handle whatever you throw at us. And of course, our media relations, we will tell your story in the long form, because Twitter, as Kendall has said, is not the place for these kinds of big ideas. We got to get your story out there. Press releases, pitches. We will do. Okay, I'm going to stop. All right. I think this has been a fun discussion, folks. Kendall and Kelsey. And I am your host, Jonathan Narvey, founder of Mind Meld PR. You've been listening or maybe watching an episode of Mind Meld PR Breaking News. And I guess we'll see you next time. Well, what's my outro? Anybody got any cool idea?
We need like a little jingle.
Yeah, we need a jingle, that's for sure.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you next time on Mind Meld PR Breaking News.